to the Second and Two podcast, everyone's favorite football podcast, talking all things NFL offseason here, picking up where we left off with our divisional previews for 2023. I'm your host, TB. Got my co-host, producer extraordinaire, new hat owner, it appears.
Yeah. Yep.
Glasses connoisseur, master of the barbecue, expert financial advisor, Jodye.
No, so you did pick up on the new hat. Literally got it yesterday, which is funny. I will say, when I meant burger flipper extraordinaire, I meant more working at In-N-Out, not necessarily on the grill outside, because I haven't cooked a burger outside in forever. But that's what we're going with these days. But how you been, bro? It's been a week. What's new?
So many things are new. I'm working on moving out of my place right now, so there's a lot going on with that. You know, there's always like the stresses of moving, and I move out in like 3 or 4 days. So
oh shoot, that's quick.
Yeah. So I'm almost all the way packed up, but and then obviously like just you got to get the moving truck, you got to get help, you got to do everything.
True.
It's good stuff though. Good things happening. I'm excited for it. So yeah, that's what's new for me. What's up with you?
Not much, man. Just working as always. I guess I got a quick question for you. What do you think is the hardest part about moving? Is it packing? Is it finding help? Or if you don't own a truck, having to go rent a truck? Or you could rank those in the order if that's easier.
Well, I would say the worst part is having to pay for the moving truck, right? Like, yeah, because it's not like an enjoyable experience to move, and then you have to pay for this big truck, and all kinds of liability, and you obviously you drive slow and you're super careful and all that stuff. Like, I would say that's the worst part, is having to pay for that. I mean, the second worst for sure is finding help, because that's just again, no one likes moving. No one likes moving all the furniture and all the stuff you got to move. Yeah. It does not help that I'm on the 3rd floor of an apartment complex with like a narrow stairwell.
Yeah. Plus, it probably corkscrews around, or you gotta bend it weird ways and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very like Friends. As good of a TV show as it is, the biggest thing that it nailed definitely was the episode where they're trying to get the couch up the stairs, man. Pivot. I mean, that's what it was like getting my stuff in here. And so now I'm just dreading getting it all out. It's going to be a good time. And yeah, so you got to go get help, and you kind of just have to ask. And then I mean, what can you do? No one likes doing it. So yeah, I would say the packing is not that bad. I feel like I've gotten to the point where I'm an expert packer now.
Oh, okay. There we go. You can add that to your list. I got to introduce you one day and hit that.
Yeah. You learn how to use like towels and clothes as like,
to keep things like safe.
Yeah. Secure your breakables, your fragilities. It's like
your, what is it? Packaging peanuts or whatever they're called, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're almost there. I mean, I have a few more things to pack up. The kitchen's always the hardest part, because you
need to use that stuff still. Yeah.
So you still got to use it up until like the last day. So that's probably the hardest part to pack, but pretty much got everything else packed. I mean, you can see my walls are all barren, have been for the last couple pods, and that's why. So I've been knowing I was going to move, obviously, for a little while. So I've been doing like a box a day kind of thing.
Yeah, there you go. Just like you get something in there, like you feel accomplished, you did something.
Yeah. But I'm now at the point where we're right on the home stretch, so I got to finish it up.
There you go. Well, speaking of packing, bro, people are here for football, and our guy DeMeco Ryans, he got his backpack from the Bay. And he's got to Houston.
That was such a good segue. I was like, man, what's this guy gonna do right now? That was an incredible segue. I'm not gonna lie. That was
it's rare we have a real one, so I figured I'd get it cooked in there. I had it rolling. I pulled up what we're looking at today. We got the AFC South. Get that out there, as I mentioned, the Texans. And so I was just waiting for you to pull up the screens, but I was like, I gotta fit this in before he says something about it, So I had to shoot from the hip real quick, let it out.
like the true Texan that you are, right there.
Yeah, there you go. What was that? 02 when they started?
Yeah, 02 expansion franchise, man. They've only been in existence for like 20 years. It's crazy.
That's pretty wild. We're older than the Texans.
We are, bro. I mean, so I actually do have some interesting tidbits for you for this division. Because I love giving you the tidbits, Joe.
Yeah. Might have spoiled one.
All four teams have won the division since 2014. So they've all had some success since in the last less than 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I asked you who's won the division the most times since 2011, what would you guess?
Well, I already have the answer sheet, so I don't want to spoil it. But I'll just tell you, you could credit, I guess shockingly enough, I'll say this instead. The Colts are not the team you would pick. That's not the right answer. That's probably who you would pick, but it's not correct.
No.
Which is shocking.
It's just you realize the Colts have, Peyton Manning's been out of the division for quite
Andrew
some time.
Luck as well, but I don't even know when that was. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, well, even with Luck for a good stretch of that run, I mean, Luck was the first pick in 2012 with the franchise until I believe 18 was his last year.
I don't recall.
So yeah, the Texans have actually won the division 6 times since 2011, and then the Jaguars, Colts, and Titans have all won it twice in that same time span. So
yeah,
there's only one team, the 2009 Colts, has won the Super Bowl since the AFC South was created with realignment in 2002. They're also the only team with a Super Bowl berth since 2002, since they also went in 2006. So this division has kind of had it's a tough history. I mean, the problem for it is that it's not a long history. It's interesting because all 4 teams came into the league as expansion teams or teams that moved. So you had the Baltimore Colts, famously moved in the middle of the night, became the Indianapolis Colts. The Houston Oilers become the Tennessee Titans. Mm-hmm. The Jags came in the league as an expansion team in 1995. And the Texans came in the league in 2002 as an expansion team. So not long histories for the Jags and Texans. Not surprising they haven't been to or won a Super Bowl yet. The Titans have had some really good regular seasons, but they seem to have always struggled in the playoffs. So
that's true.
And then obviously the Colts just were blessed with Peyton Manning, and that's really their run is like the Peyton Manning years. But the Jaguars have never been past the AFC Championship. The Titans have never been past the AFC Championship. The Texans have never been past the divisional round. So
yeah, that's tough.
The best Texans moment probably came the year with Deshaun Watson and Bill O'Brien. They were up famously up
was
like 24 to. I think it was year 2 or year 3. They were up 24-0 on the road in Kansas City, famously, and in the divisional round, and blew it. That probably was their best chance to get to an AFC Championship game, and they weren't able to get it done. But I would say with the histories of all these teams being so different and sort of short, this division feels like probably the least historical or successful division in the NFL. Just the newness of the teams and the lack of postseason success, again, outside of basically Peyton Manning. But I will say this, the division is really competitive. It's changed hands many times. And the question will be this year, can the division winner or even the wild card entrant, that should they get one, do any damage in the playoffs when they get there? We'll certainly.
I like that if they get one, because that's a huge statement.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll go through these teams. This division is a little rough right now, just because you look around and all of the teams are young. They really have young quarterbacks. Obviously, Trevor Lawerence coming into year 3 is a little bit more experienced. He got to the divisional round last year, so that's different. The Texans and Colts figure to be playing rookies. Mm-hmm. The Titans have an experienced veteran on the roster, Ryan Tannehill, who's been successful in the league, but got a couple young guys in Levis and Willis on the roster that are year 1, year 2 guys that could potentially play this year. So This is kind of the young QB division, and with young quarterbacks comes natural struggle, at least early on. You can ask the Jaguars, year 1, year 2, with Trevor Lawerence, what kind of a difference that made. Obviously, coaching, I think we could assume played a huge factor in that, but also just in general, year 1 to year 2, there's always major growth. So a lot of these other teams are going to be going through year 1 with their quarterbacks. So, we won't be surprised if they struggle, right? But starting with, as you said, the team that brings in a new quarterback this year themselves and a new head coach. I believe we got the Houston Texans.
Yeah, so last year they went 3-13-1. Most famously fumbled the bag on the first overall pick to the Bears. For that reason, let's see, they finished last in their division, and when you only win 3 games, you ain't making the playoffs.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, it's interesting to say that a team that went 3-13-1 had some key losses, but they did. They really did, and maybe these will prove to be, better when you include their additions. But they traded Brandon Cooks to the Cowboys. Brandon Cooks had been there for a couple years and seemed, was still actually surprisingly very productive, despite kind of what they had going on at quarterback, which is no slight to the guys they've been playing. But since Deshaun Watson's left, they've kind of had a revolving door of quarterbacks, have been struggling to find the next guy. At the edge position, Ogbo or Okoronkwo, tough one. I just call him Ogbo. Used to play for the Rams. Was a Houston, signed a 1-year deal with the Texans last year. Had some production. He moved on, I believe, to the Browns, and so they're losing a little bit of edge production there. Their center, Justin Britt, really good player, been in the league for a long time. Quarterback Kyle Allen was the backup quarterback last year. He's gone. Their tight end, OJ Howard, formerly a first-round pick of the Buccaneers, had a decent year last year. And then Rex Burkhead, running back who they used probably more than anyone expected last year. He is also gone. Now, in terms of their signees, in addition to a couple other guys that didn't make it on the list on here, just edge Mario Addison, who had been there for a really long time. He's a little older, so that's not surprising. And then receiver Philip Dorsett, they also lost him. But they added some really key players. Number 1, the guard, Shaq Mason. Huge addition to this offensive line. Also beefing up on the defensive line, Sheldon Rankins. Both guys figure to be starters in year 1. Receiver Robert Woods, tight end Dalton Schultz. Also guys who I would figure will come in and start right away for them. They signed safety Jimmy Ward from San Francisco, so he comes in. He understands the DeMeco Ryans defense that they're going to run. So that's a big signing. They also brought in cornerback Shaq Griffin, pretty good corner. He figures to be a starter as well. They added Case Keenum to give them some veteran presence in the quarterback room. Running back Devin Singletary and receiver Noah Brown add depth to their offensive skill position. So as much as they lost some guys, I think they added plenty of guys to try and make this team better this year, and specifically help CJ Stroud. But they added some dudes in the draft too, huh?
Yeah, so we got CJ Stroud, as you just mentioned. What was that, 2nd overall? Edge Will Anderson that they ended up trading up for at 3. And then they got a center, Juice Scruggs. That's a nice name, Juice. He's got the juice. And they got a wide receiver, Tank Dell. Dang, those are both some good names right there.
Yeah, I like the Tank Dell should be fun. I think with CJ.
Where was he from? I don't know much about
Houston.
him.
Houston. He was a guy who actually. Speaking of, let me just put on right now for the Senior Bowl today. I don't know if you can see that, but I got my Senior Bowl shirt on. But he was a guy that popped really big time at the Senior Bowl. Okay. So Tank Dell was a guy that started getting, he came out of Houston. Houston didn't have they were pretty decent in the Big 12 this year, but just not as good as I think people were hoping for. So they kind of fell off the map in terms of college football coverage later in the year. But he was a guy who had a great year, and then really impressed at the Senior Bowl. Was a guy that a lot of people were talking about during the Senior Bowl practices. So he ends up being a 3rd round pick at receiver, and I think that's going to be a good thing for Houston. It sounds like CJ Stroud really kind of was begging them to draft him. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge. And then looking at their management, their general manager would be Nick Caserio. Their head coach is DeMeco Ryans, as we previously mentioned. First year there. Let's see. Offensive coordinator, we got Bobby Slowick. And then the D coordinator is going to be Matt Burke. Now, I have a question before we continue. Mm-hmm. With the head coach, right, being a former D coordinator, how does the B coming in being a D coordinator? Like, do you just sit back and let him run it, or do you still call the plays and he'll give you feedback?
Well, I think every guy is different, right? It has become increasingly more popular, it appears, for head coaches to still call a side of the ball. And I think a big part of that is for continuity reasons. I also think it's sometimes hard as a coach to kind of let go of what you've been good at, especially if you've been a great play caller, whether it's on offense or defense. It can be hard to trust someone else to do that, I think. Some guys are ready to give that up right away. They're like, hey, I need to be a head coach. I want to run the organization, run the structure. That's not my job anymore. I can't be good at both those jobs at the same time. Other coaches are, again, it's tough for them to relinquish that control just because they know they're good at it, right? And if you know you're good at it, it can be a hard thing to, relinquish control of. But it's also difficult when, if your coordinators are really good, which is what you want, those guys end up becoming head coaches. So you have situations like, what Sean McVay has had in Los Angeles, where his offensive coordinator feels like moves on every year and gets a better job, right? Becomes a head coach. But since he's the play caller, they don't lose, as much of the continuity as you might if you were losing your play caller every single year, right? Gotcha, And so I think it's especially true on offense, maybe less so defensively, but I think even still, I think there's obviously, you're as a head coach, if you're going to go hire someone to call the side of the ball that you previously called, and you're going to relinquish those play calling duties, you want someone who aligns with you philosophically, is going to run a similar style majority of the time, right? But then if you're going to do it, I think as a head coach, it's important that you really allow your coordinator to go do what they want to do, right? And let it be their vision within your, framework of running the team. Let it be their defense, right? So
I feel it.
I think that's why those conversations up front in interviews in that process are so important. It's also why a lot of a lot of guys who become head coaches will elevate a guy that they worked with before who was part of their offensive or defensive staff, because they understand exactly what they want and can run that and without, with it being still there.
The same mindset. Yeah, I got you.
Which is exactly what, Matt Burke is to DeMeco Ryans. So makes a ton of sense. It's not surprising. And I'm sure DeMeco still will have his stamp on not just the defense, but this entire team, how he wants it to function. True. But it will be, Matt Burke calling those defensive plays.
Gotcha. Well,
great question.
Again, thanks for teaching me something.
Well, if it's anything like again, I haven't been a part of an NFL staff and not, pretending like that's my background or anything, but if it's anything like the staffs I've been a part of, that's generally, how that goes.
Yeah.
But looking at the Houston depth chart, just kind of, or in terms of their starters, what they're looking at. Offensively, you look from left to right. Laramie Tunsil, they locked him down this offseason, gave him some more money, some more years to keep going. He's been awesome as a left tackle for them for a number of years now. Come a long way from draft day when he fell for a little bit. At left guard, they got Kenyon Green. At the center, Juice Scruggs figures to come in and start. They also signed Scott Quisenberry. So they'll have a little bit of a battle, I would think. Quisenberry's been in the league for a while. He's a good veteran. So at worst case, he provides some depth behind Scruggs, or he'll be ready to go if Scruggs isn't ready. Shaq Mason, I mentioned that signing, huge signing at right guard. And then Titus Howard should be the right tackle. Obviously, at quarterback, everything out of camp so far has been that CJ Stroud is ahead of the curve. It's looking really good. He's already taken first-team reps. He should be the starter from day one. That's what it sounds like.
Ooh.
Case Keenum will likely be the veteran backup there. And then Davis Mills, right now, I would figures to be the third-string quarterback. It's interesting because in years past, someone like Davis Mills might have been a candidate to be cut just because he's probably good enough to be someone else's backup, right? And as opposed to a third stringer. But now they passed that new rule where you can have 3 active quarterbacks on game day. And so I wonder how that changes that equation for some teams. They may be more willing to keep a guy like Davis Mills around to have him be that third active quarterback. Now, I believe the way that rule works is you can activate him from the practice squad. So they would still need to, the way that whole formula works is you have to cut the guy and essentially sign him to your practice squad. And if he's on your practice squad, anyone can sign him to their active roster at any time. So if someone else looks at him and says, "Oh, he's good enough to be our number 2," then he would still be, he would still be gone unless he chose to stay with Houston as a practice squad player. But that, for obvious reasons, rarely happens.
More money,
so
why not?
Yeah, more chance to play, all that.
Yeah,
so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Davis Mills. If he ends up being like their practice squad quarterback, who's the third quarterback activated on game day, or if he's a guy who ends up leaving and getting another opportunity somewhere else. I'd be curious to see what happens with that. At running back, they got Dameon Pierce coming back. He was great for them last year. And then Devin Singletary, they signed from the Bills. So they'll have like a little bit of a two-headed monster there. There are other skill positions. At the X receiver, Nico Collins has had a quietly kind of couple productive years here. Amari Rodgers comes in as well to back him up. At the tight end position, they brought in Dalton Schultz to be the guy at that slot receiver position. Brought in Robert Woods this offseason and then drafted Tank Dell. Robert Woods is a little older, super wily veteran, gives them an awesome presence. Wouldn't be surprised if kind of as the season goes, Tank Dell maybe steals some reps from him. It probably also depends on what John Mechie III looks like out there at the Z receiver position. He's coming back, missed his entire rookie year, recovering from cancer. And now he's cancer-free, getting ready to play, which is just awesome.
That's huge.
Yeah, I'm super excited for him. He's battled a lot to be able to come play. So really, really excited to see what that guy offers for their offense, but also just the fact that he gets to go do what he loves. He's healthy. And those are always good stories that make you feel good. So, and then behind him, they also brought in, as I mentioned earlier, Noah Brown, more depth at receiver. So the Houston offense is young, but they have just enough veterans sprinkled throughout that, there's some real talent, some youth, and some experience there.
Yeah.
Defensively, yeah, I think Bobby Slowick has some tools to play with. So defensively, they obviously drafted Will Anderson, who figures to be a monster on the edge for them. Also, Chase Winovich comes in to be another edge rusher for them. Inside, Sheldon Rankins figures to be a monster at the nose. They brought in, they have Malik Collins and Hassan Ridgeway as more defensive interior linemen. And then on the edge on the other side, Jerry Hughes and Jonathan Greenard give them some more depth as well. At linebacker, they actually have a really interesting group of linebackers. And if, I'll talk about this later, but if you know anything about DeMeco Ryans, he really loves linebackers that can play great zone drops who are really good. I mean, that's why Fred Warner was just so successful with them. So I was really excited when they drafted Henry To'oto'o. It was a guy that we featured in our linebacker breakdown before the draft. Guy who I really liked, a little undersized, not your traditional looking linebacker, but plays really hard, extremely smart, and was great in pass coverage. I know he was like a 5th round pick for them. I would not be shocked if he's playing real reps for them later in the year. So, but they have a lot of players on here who fit that kind of bill of being good linebackers in coverage. Right now, penciled in as starters would be Christian Harris and Denzel Perryman, both veterans who've got a lot of experience. But don't be surprised, like they brought in Corey Littleton. He's kind of an undersized, really good coverage linebacker. Christian Kirksey, and then Henry To'oTo'o they drafted. So those are all guys who I would not be shocked if you're seeing different guys playing linebacker for them later in the year than what they might start out as. So really interesting position battle there. Then in the slot corner, Desmond King figures to kind of go back. He played a lot more outside corner for them last year, but I think with the addition of Shaq Griffin and then having Steven Nelson at corner with Derek Stingley Jr., I think Desmond King can kind of slide back into the nickel where he's been really productive in years past. And then at the safety spots, Jalen Petrie and then obviously Jimmy Ward coming over from San Francisco. Give them some veteran experience in the back end.
Yeah, it sounds. I like what you said about both sides of the ball. Has me feeling good about my prediction. Maybe they do better going forward.
I think Texans fans should be feeling optimistic. I think there's a lot of reason to feel like, and I'm not saying they're going to be like a surprise playoff team or anything like that this year. Obviously, we'll get to predictions in a little bit, but I do think there's reason to believe this team is on the right track again.
Yeah, that's for sure. But yeah, so their schedule this coming up year, they actually start on the road versus the Ravens. It's going to be a tough game just in general, traveling in Baltimore. But week 2, they come home, first home game, playing against the Colts. Another team we'll be looking at shortly. Going to be fun. Rookie quarterbacks on those squads. Then they go on the road to Jacksonville playing the Jags. They Trevor Lawerence, week 4 they're going to be in at home playing Pittsburgh. Sorry about that. Then they got week 5 on the road in Atlanta playing the Falcons. Week 6 they got the Saints at home. That I don't want to project too much, but I feel like that's going to be your tough stretch from 4 to 8. But week 7 they got their bye week following that Saints game. Then they go on the road to North Carolina playing the Panthers. Panthers also coming off a bye. Let's see, week 9 they got the Bucks at home. Yeah, I think my statement's coming more true and true. Week 10 they go on the road, play the Bengals. That's tough. And then they got 3 home games right here. Week 11 through 13 they got the Cardinals. And then they got the Jags and they got the Broncos. And then they got a couple away games right here. Week 14 and 15 they got the Jets on the road and then the Titans on the road. First time they're playing them all year. Week 16 they're home against the Browns. And then 17 home against the Titans, getting that second game in. And then they close out on the road, Indianapolis against the Colts. Dang, that's tough. They play them week 2 and then week 18.
Yeah, they have like a couple schedule quirks. I mean, week 2, week 18, the Colts. It's like almost 2 completely different seasons there.
Yeah.
Then also weirdly, like week 15, week 17 with the Titans, you kind of have like a back-to-back with them. And then also interesting, they have 0 primetime games.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that.
Which, I mean, I get maybe why that was the case when the NFL did its schedule, but honestly, they may be kind of a fun, scrappy team to watch this year, would be my guess, and I think they may regret not putting them in primetime at least once.
Yeah, I was gonna say with the
CJ
Colts,
Stroud,
one of those games, it should be 2 rookie quarterbacks people are looking forward to watching. One of those feels like they should be like a Thursday night.
Yeah, definitely feels like a Thursday night. So you kind of alluded to earlier, like the easy stretch in their schedule, I think, is weeks 5 through 9. Yeah. They get to play the NFC South, which, spoiler alert for next week, but the NFC South I just don't think is very good. I think it's probably the worst. It's maybe between the 2 South divisions for like worst division in football this year. At least the way things look going into the season, just because all those teams are sporting young quarterbacks or don't know who their quarterback is or have a new quarterback. And so it's difficult when that's the case and there's so much instability at the quarterback position. And that's true in both the AFC and NFC South. And they're playing each other this year. So you get a lot of kind of, unfortunately, like bad football games. Like I don't know who wants to watch Texans Buccaneers in week 9. That might be kind of a tough one. Again, the Texans may actually be more fun to watch.
True.
No disrespect to them. It's just, it could be a tough game. But so weeks 5 through 9 at the Falcons versus the Saints, bye week at the Panthers versus the Bucks.
Yeah.
That's probably their easiest stretch. They could probably pick up a couple wins in that stretch, even with a young quarterback, especially coming out of the bye, getting more time for him to pick some stuff up. Really figures like you could probably beat the Buccaneers, maybe pick up a win against one of those other 3 teams, go a little like 2-2 in that stretch, and feel good about yourselves. Their tough stretch, though, it's kind of a tough one. Weeks 12 through 16, I think, is pretty tough. They've got to play on the road at the Jets and the Titans. They get those home games versus the Jaguars, the Broncos, and the Browns. I figure all 5 of those teams could be competing for playoffs positioning. By that, especially kind of that late in the year. So, they could just be easily could be an 0-5 stretch for a young team that's still finding itself at that point. So, at least 3 out of the 5 are at home, and you don't have to like go to Denver, for instance. That's nice, but you still have the 2 divisional games, the Titans and the Jaguars, which I think will both be tough for them. Obviously, at the Jets is a real tough one, especially that late in the year. You figure Rodgers will be firing on all cylinders. Deshaun Watson and the Browns, Week 16. That's another pretty tough one too. So
he's coming back home. I guess I think he did that last year too, didn't he?
Yeah. So that could be just a real tough game for them in general. Really tough stretch. So yeah, that's how I see their schedule.
Yeah. So brings us to our predictions. I had them going 6-11, slightly better than yours being 5-12. I think we see it similarly where they could probably, outside the Jags in their own division, probably trade those, whichever way you want to put it. Titans being a little bit tougher considering they still have Tannehill on the squad. And then, like you said, the NFC South, that stretch could easily be split 2-2 or, they win all 4 or whatever the case may be. But outside of those ones, it's like who else are you going to beat at that point, Like you mentioned the Jets and Broncos being tough. Cardinals, I guess there's a possibility there, but it gets tough down the road.
I think the Texans will likely be in a lot of games this year. This is what there was like a lot of phases to team building, and like phase 1 is just learning how to compete. And I think the Texans will do that this year. I think they're going to be competitive in a lot of games. Don't be surprised if there's like a weird, week 1 upset at the Ravens or week 10 upset at the Bengals. You know what I mean? Just that kind of one game where they just put it all together and they sneak up on a team and get a win, despite being a team that's probably going to have a losing record, right? But so I wouldn't be shocked if they have that. But there's also probably going to be a game where they just lose by 20 points because they're young and they're still learning themselves. DeMeco Ryans is a first-time head coach, right? You got a rookie quarterback. So you're going to have natural bumps, but I do think there will be some highs. I do think they're going to be very competitive in a lot of games. And so 5-12 feels about right for them, better than last year, but not quite ready to be a winner. And, I think they're probably going to move. They're going to progress forward to being a team that could potentially be ready to win next year. That's kind of how I see them.
Yeah, so looking ahead, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Oh, my bad. I forgot to ask you the question. So, what do you think DeMeco Ryan brings to Houston, being defensively or just being from the head coach position?
Well, I think one is DeMeco Ryans is kind of a rising star. It only took him being 2 years as the 49ers coordinator to become a head coach. He from all the rumors last year, I mean, he could potentially have had the Vikings job last year if he really wanted it. Whether I don't know if that's true or not, but he was at least a finalist, right? Yeah. So he's been a guy who's been on a lot of radars, been a rising star in the coaching profession, had a very productive career as a player, and so it translates into his passion and emotion as a coach. You see it in the way that he calls defenses. I really love a lot of the stuff he does. Number one, he's going to show you a lot of too high safety looks. Obviously, the first look I'm bringing up here now, of course, isn't a too high safety look, but a lot of too high that can turn into one high. But really, the big staple of what he's done with the 49ers is they play a lot of zone. More than 80% of their defensive looks were zone last year, according to PFF. So, I mean, you're seeing a lot more zone, not a lot of man. They love to play those games up front with the D-line where they're going to run loopers and run little pick games. We saw that during the season last year. We watched a lot of clips of that stuff. And the games they run with the guys they had in San Francisco were just vicious. And so hopefully he can repeat some of that success in Houston. He'll have some of those same guys up front. I mean, the other thing that's just a staple is it's very clear he builds his defense from the backers up and back, right? So like those linebackers, the way that you can get away with playing as much zone as they did is if you have great hook droppers or flat defenders as those linebackers, that they're good and they get their depth. They're versatile enough to blitz or show and drop out. That all of that stuff lets you have the versatility. So you're disguising things, but you still ultimately are getting into zone. And guys like Fred Warner were like uniquely gifted doing that. I mean, even better than DeMeco Ryans. That's what DeMeco Ryans did so well as a linebacker when he was playing, because it was so much less common for you to have those really good pass defending linebackers back in, his era of football, 2007 to like 2015, right? So he was so good at that. And I think the linebackers he's had have been even better. Fred Warner is potentially the best in the NFL at that. So you watch some of this stuff. Well, so I'll stop gabbing, show you. This is a little thing against the Rams on Monday Night Football last year. I think it was week 4. Just absolutely obliterated the Rams offensive line with that D-line game. And they're going to show and then drop out. Look at Fred Warner, right? And he actually comes on that one. But they run the little looping game with Bosa and Ibukam, and Bosa.
And that was deep.
He gets home, right? Here's another look against the Cardinals later in the year. That 2 high safety look, but you see how it becomes 1 high? See how they actually drop
it all together, to be honest. I was watching the line again.
they drop Tufunga into the hook drop, right? And then they have their flat defenders out here. And now it becomes a 1 high safety look, right? Now the quarterback thinks, I'm just going to take my shot here, right? I've got him beat, but that's where that 1 high safety comes over and makes the play. And now you create what you create afterwards, right? But those messing with the safeties is one of the easiest ways to kind of get a quarterback to do what you want him to do. Here's the playoff game against Dak, right? Again, 2 high safety look. They've got empty, so you can see Fred Warner is shading to this number 3 receiver. Now, this is one of the hardest jobs, right? Because remember, with 5 offensive linemen, they create those 6 gaps, right? There's C gap, B gap, A gap, A gap, B gap, C gap. So you have to have 6 defenders close enough to the box that if they were to run like QB draw with Dak Prescott, you have every gap filled. So you can't leave the box entirely with your backers when they go empty, and that's why teams do it, is to spread you out. So like Fred Warner, that's one of the tougher jobs. Like he's the B gap defender, but also has to kind of, depending on the coverage that they're in, eyes drop number 3. That's a hard one, right? But Fred Warner, he's so gifted because he can do that, right? I mean, he can easily do that. So now he sees this, and look, they end up getting the interception with Jimmy Ward, or Jimmy Ward bounces it to Fred Warner and he gets the interception.
Yeah,
and this is like, that's what it's like when you have these great athletic linebackers who can drop like that. Look at Fred Warner. Going to get his run pass read, gets in pass coverage. Boom. They jump it, right? They play this great coverage. Dak thinks he's got CeeDee Lamb on the in and out, but it turns out, nope. Now, flashback. 2012, Philadelphia Eagles. Who's playing linebacker in the middle here? DeMeco Ryans against Joe
he's got
Flacco.
That bolt stance, bro. He's low.
Yeah, look at him. Look at him getting his depth. Look. Oh, pick. He gets the pick on Joe Flacco. Tries to get the run back, but they blow it dead. My guy's mad, but juiced up. Yeah. Look at him. And that's how he coaches, right? He coaches his linebackers the same way that he played. I have a lot of respect for DeMeco Ryans. I think he does a great job. I love a lot of the stuff he does defensively. They're aggressive, but they're not leaving themselves exposed. They do a lot of things, rotating their safeties. They love playing games up front. Everything from him is show you one thing, give you something else. And so I think he's going to get that thing rocking in Houston. I feel like they're going to be pretty good in the next couple years.
Yeah, I hope so. Everything you showed me seems fun. It sounds fun. Things are definitely looking upward down there. Another team that has that going for them is the Jaguars. They went 9-8 last year, finished first in the division, and then they ended up losing the divisional round in the playoffs last year.
Yeah. In terms of some key losses and additions for them, not a lot of losses to speak of. Not a lot of additions either. I mean, it's kind of interesting. They lost Shaq Griffin, the corner, to Houston. They lost the receiver Marvin Jones. He went back to Detroit. Arden Key was a good edge defender for them, and then Jawan Taylor, another pretty good tackle. However, they added Josh Wells to give them some tackle depth, and then they added receiver Jacob Harris, a big receiver who was with the Rams last year but was hurt. Just kind of a decent red zone threat. May play a little bit for them. Outside of that, their big additions actually came in the draft.
Yeah, so they had another offensive tackle that they drafted, being Anton Harrison. They got a tight end from I don't know why I said from. The tight end being Brenton Strange, and then they got a running back, Tank Bigsby, who also talked about during our preview.
Yeah, love Tank Bigsby. Think he could be a nice little thunder lightning combo with Travis Etienne.
Okay, yeah, word. Yeah, the management that they got down there, they got their general manager being Trent Bulk. I'm going with Bulk on that one. Baki. Dang, that's tough. Head coach, Dougie P, as you like to call him, Doug Peterson. Offensive coordinator being Press Taylor. And D coordinator being Mike Caldwell. Press Taylor, that's a cool name too.
Yeah, their OCDC don't get a lot of love. Everyone loves Dougie P, so that's probably why. But those guys did an excellent job last year. I raved about the Jaguars defense and just some of the stuff they were doing. And obviously offensively, they were so much better last year than they were the year before. Looking at their starters for this year, you bring back Cam Robinson at the left tackle, but you also have Anton Harrison sitting there waiting to go possibly replace him, or he gives you depth if Cam Robinson were to get hurt. So it's a big time addition, knowing that you don't have to play Anton Harrison right away either. Then at left guard, they've got Ben Barch. At the center, Luke Fortner. Right guard, Brandon Scherf. And right tackle, Walker Little, who was awesome for them last year. So pretty good up front, actually. I really like their offensive line, and the fact that they don't have to play Anton Harrison right away. Also, Josh Wells giving them depth. They have a lot of depth at the tackle positions. Feels like they're suited to protect Trevor Lawerence long term.
Yeah, that's huge.
Obviously, at quarterback, you've got Trevor Lawerence, and backing him up is C.J. Beathard again. At running back, Travis Etienne Jr. and Tank Bigsby. Like I said, little thunder lightning combo there now. At the X receiver, Calvin Ridley coming in off the suspension. Very excited to see what happens with him. I think when I look at last year when they made the trade for him in the right before the trade deadline, everyone's kind of like, hey, this guy can't play. What are they doing? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think now looking at it, it made a ton of sense. Trent Baalke understood that Marvin Jones was probably going to leave in the offseason, and they basically traded for his replacement before it even happened. And it makes a ton of sense. Calvin Ridley's extremely motivated. He missed football for a year. So I really like that move. I think he's gonna fit in seamlessly, despite them losing Marvin Jones Jr. As I mentioned earlier, Jacob Harris provides a real threat coming in as well. And then at the tight end position, Evan Ingram with their draft pick Brenton Strange, giving them another threat there. At the R spot, the slot, you got Christian Kirksey and Jamal Agnew. And then at the other outside receiver, Zay Jones, who had a big year with Trevor Lawerence last year. So a lot of good skill players for Trevor Lawerence. Great offensive lineup in front of him. I think there's all the pieces there for them to be very successful offensively this year.
Yeah, it sounds like he has some good weapons out there, receiver for sure.
Yeah. On defense, bringing back Josh Allen. Yes, the edge defender, Josh Allen, not the quarterback. Behind him, Clevon Chasen. And then inside, they have Devon Hamilton and Roy Robertson Harris. And at the other edge, obviously, Trayvon Walker, who looks to have a big year too, former first pick. At the will linebacker spots, they bring Devin Lloyd and Foyesade Olukun. And then at the nickel corner spot. Trey Herndon. A lot of tough names there.
No doubt.
Guys who had some pretty decent years, but just not, obviously not talked about a whole lot. So I'm excited to watch those guys again. On the back end at safety, at the strong safety, a guy who I just love how he plays, Rayshon Jenkins. He was a guy making a lot of the plays on the film we watched, had the pick six to end the game in overtime against the Cowboys last year. Andre Cisco at the free safety, former Ram Darius Williams at the corner spot, and big time graded out corner last year. Probably a big reason why they were able to let Shaq Griffin walk in free agency. Tyson Campbell at the other corner spot. They're young, but they're pretty good in that back end. So not a lot of big names on this defense, but I think dudes who are getting the job done. So
yeah, was that number 2, the guy with the dread?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a baller for sure. Let's see the schedule they got. They start on the road versus the Colts. So the week 1, as we saw, they're gonna have their first divisional game right off the bat on the road in Indianapolis. They got a couple games here at home. They play week 2 against the Chiefs. Week 3 against the Texans, as we saw on the last screen. Week 4, they're going to London. Also week 5. But week 4, they're playing the Falcons in London, them being the home team. And I don't know how you do that. You probably just stay there, I guess. I don't know. You play the Bills there week 5. And then you come back and you play the Colts at home, which is it just me or they normally have the bye right after they travel overseas?
Yeah, a lot of times it feels like they do, but they don't, obviously can't be guaranteed. So some teams get kind of shafted on that, honestly.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, so week 6, they play the Colts after being in London for 2 weeks straight. They got 2 road games right before their bye. They play Thursday night against the Saints, and then they play week 8 in Pittsburgh against the Steelers, leading up to their bye week 9. Week 10, they got the Niners, who also come off their bye week. Seems like a tough game right after that bye.
Mm-hmm.
Week 11, they got the Titans at home. So they got 2 home games right there. Let's see. Week 12 on the road in Houston. That's going to be a fun one probably. Houston might be able to get their things rolling and maybe put up a fight. Week 13, they go to – never mind. They don't go nowhere. They're staying at home against the Bengals Monday night. That sounds really fun. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Looking
Burrow
forward.
versus Lawrence.
Yeah. Let's see. Week 14 on the road in Cleveland playing the Browns. Then they got week 15 at home. Sunday night game against the Ravens. That also sounds really fun. Looking forward to that one. Week 16, they got the Bucks in Tampa. Week 17, they're home against the Panthers, and then they close out on the road playing the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that the back 5 weeks of their schedule, weeks 14 through 18, are probably their easiest stretch. They do have 3 home games during that stretch, but they're or I should say 3 road games during that stretch. But I think the teams that they're playing with, the Panthers, the Bucks, and then I think even at the Titans in week 18, I think they have a really high level of, or a high chance of finishing strong with those 3 games.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I think they could certainly, split with either the, at the Browns or versus the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. So, I mean, in general, if I'm calling that their, quote unquote, easy stretch or favorable stretch during the schedule, they have a pretty tough schedule. So that is very apparent. I would say that their weeks 2 through 7 are really tough. Having the Chiefs at home, having the Texans, could be favorable. The Falcons could be favorable, but you got to go to London to do it. Then you stay in London for basically 2 weeks and then play the Bills, which is a tough opponent, and then being in London for the second week. Yeah. Now, you could look at it 2 ways. Either say they have an advantage because they'll have been in London, and the Bills will be getting acclimated, so they'll have that. Or it's like, hey, we've been in London for 2 weeks, we're exhausted, we're ready to go home.
You don't even have your normal training routine and all that. You got to figure it out on the road. And
and you're away from your family and you're in bed and all that stuff. I will be curious to see how they handle that trip. If they go maybe a little bit later before they play the Falcons, just so they're not in London forever. Because I imagine once they're in London, they're staying all the way through their game against the Bills. And then you have to come right back. As you said, you get no bye week after being in London for 2 weeks and play the Colts, who, it's a divisional opponent. And so they know you well, and it's going to be the second time playing them and all that. And then you got to go and have a Thursday night game right after that against the Saints, who I think
on the road too.
Yeah, could potentially be a lot better. And I didn't include it in this, but then, by the way, you follow that up with at the Steelers, which is always a tough place to play before you get to your bye week. So that's probably the toughest stretch of their schedule. And, it doesn't get any easier. You come out of the bye, like you said, versus the Niners, who are also coming off their bye week. This is a tough schedule for the Jaguars. It's going to test them.
Yeah, I agree. Looks like we both agree with the record they end up getting to 11-6. I'm assuming that means they take first in their division again. I mean, like you said, they close out. They could very well be 4-1, at worst probably 3-2, and that Chiefs game going to be tough, and the Bills especially in London, and that Niners game are probably all the hard ones that we'll see, and then you sprinkle in a loss or here and there or something, and then that gets them to 11-6.
Yeah, I would say that I would anticipate they go right around 5-1 in the division. I think their division, they're better than the other teams in their division. So I just anticipate they're going to have a really good divisional record. And if you say, hey, they're going to go 5-1 in the division, then that means they only have to go 6-5 versus all their other opponents. Yeah. And I think they're good enough to do that. Like I said, there's some real tough games on the schedule, but it helps that you're going to play teams like the Buccaneers and Panthers, who late in the year could not be very good at that point and be, trotting out kind of teams that are understand they're not great and it's late in the year, that kind of thing. So I do think there's some wins on their schedule for them that if they just take care of business, they should get them.
Yeah, so my question for you for the Jags is, do you think Trevor Lawerence is ready to become, as I like to call a guy, or as the kids like to call him in this next year?
I don't know if he's ready to become him in the sense that he's like, the guy at the face of the league, but I think he's ready to take the next step and become like an elite, truly elite top 10 quarterback. If he's not already there, some people already have him there. I'm not sure he's quite there yet, but I think he's right outside the door and he's ready to bust it down this year. Yeah. And if you look at his numbers from 2021 to 2022, I said there was that big growth from year 1 to year 2, but you look at his numbers and it's telling, right? He went up 7% in his completion percentage. He had 500 more yards passing. He had 13 more touchdowns. He had 9 less interceptions, and his quarterback rating was 24 points better.
Wow.
It just all around
like 90s or
he went from like a 71 to a 95 in his quarterback rating.
There you go.
So in general, I think the most telling, to go up 13 touchdowns and not 9 less interceptions is really impressive. He was not a double-digit interception guy last year, which is always something that I think is important. If you're throwing less than 10 picks in a season, you've done a really good job. And so he only threw 8 last year, compared to 17 in his first year. So I think that's a big deal. I think the big thing that I noticed with him in the playoffs was just obviously overcoming adversity in the Charger game. And then he got to duel with Mahomes for a little bit, at least a half, but just watching the tape, I'll show you like early on some stuff that really shows growth for him. Like in this Charger game, right? This is the first drive. They're kind of on a drive. His guy maybe gets held a little bit there. Zay Jones just thought he was getting held, really didn't fight to get back to the ball. Casey Hayward gets the interception. That's a tough blow. Your first playoff game, year 2, you're on a drive and you throw a pick, right? That could be a real blow to a guy's confidence if he's not, as you said, him, right? All right. So we come back. We have another drive, second drive here. All right. Now I get a tip ball. Kind of tough. Guy was in the passing lane. I tried to get it over him. It gets tipped. Guy picks it, right? Yeah. So now I've thrown 2 picks. He ends up throwing 4 picks in total in this game, and all of them came in the first half, right?
Yeah.
Any normal person, I think, would be completely shaken by this and feel like, oh no, and he was in a 27-0 hole, right?
Yeah.
And the dude comes back as the game goes. Oh man. I'll just keep talking while this, we got to kind of replay some of these. But like the dude comes back from that hole in the second half and plays absolutely lights out against, oh, by the way, like a guy who I think a lot of people before this playoff game would have said, hey, I'll take Justin Herbert over Trevor Lawerence, right?
Yeah.
They're comparable kind of players. But I think a lot of people love Herbert's talent so much and what he's shown. I think a lot of people before this playoff game would have said, I'll take Herbert over Trevor Lawerence. And there may still be people right now who would say, I take Justin Herbert over Trevor Lawerence. But I think coming out of this playoff game, the thing that I really saw from Lawerence was just the grit and determination, the ability to overcome adversity and kind of put his team on his back to go get a win in the playoffs, right? Which is, I think, it's a huge learning lesson for any quarterback, any young quarterback. You kind of have to go through
on that tackle right there.
Mm-hmm. So here's a big time play. Finds Zay Jones slicing through the middle. This was a play we broke down during the playoffs. I talked about that split safety coverage from the Chargers and kind of how they blow that coverage. But Trevor Lawerence just instantly dissects it, lets it go, throws a pretty ball right on the money to lead Zay Jones in the end zone. Right, then he has another drive here. This ends up being what becomes the game-winning drive with the 2-point conversion. Again, just slicing that Chargers defense, finds Evan Ingram, puts it on him so he can keep running, right? And this is a great view of it where you can really appreciate the throw. Just boom, puts it right on him. Yeah.
Back ain't catching up.
No, Drew Tranquil made the play earlier in the game, but wasn't going to make that one. Here's about as impressive a throw as you're going to see on the out route. That's great coverage, dude. Puts it right on Christian Kirk, where the defender just can't get it, despite great coverage. I mean, the ball placement on this throw from the opposite hash. Yeah, from the opposite hash, right? And we're talking to probably 4 yards from the sideline. And look where he put it. I mean, that's literally, can't hand it to him any better. That's a big-time throw. And then he follows that up by saying, hey, coach, let's go for 2. And I'm going to go get it myself. I'm just going to reach with my long arm over and get it on the QB sneak. Just impressive. And then he comes back the next week against the Chiefs, right? And he has a little duel with Mahomes. They were in that game. And the eventual Super Bowl champs. And look at that. Great play design by Doug Peterson, putting Christian Kirk in the backfield and running the little wheel route, getting him matched up with the linebacker. And it's a fantastic throw, right? I mean, put it on him. George Karlaftis never had a chance. That's just
well, great. You see his homie tell him, hey, bro, you got him. As he's got his head in the dirt.
Yeah. That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one. Tough matchup. The Jaguars, great play design. They caught the Chiefs in a tough defense for that look. But so you can see, I think Trevor Lawerence showed me a lot in the playoffs. I really like him. I think he's poised to be a top 10 guy in 2023.
Yeah, so next team we're taking a look at is going to be the Colts. They went 4-12-1 last year. They had the third finish in the division, and then 4 wins and making the playoffs with that.
Yeah, I think I would like. I also similarly think about the Colts. There's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of reason to believe this team will be better moving forward. I think this year they're going to be young. There may be some bumps here, but they lost a lot of veteran players. I mean, they lost, Matt Ryan at the quarterback position. At the edge spot, they lost Yannick Ngakoue. They lost the linebacker Bobby Okereke. They lost cornerback Stephon Gilmore. They lost receiver Paris Campbell. They lost the backup quarterback Nick Foles. They lost a veteran safety Rodney McLeod. So there's a lot of guys that they lost from last year's team. Now that last year's team went 4-12-1, right? So again, sometimes change is a good thing when you weren't very good. They added some interesting, some younger kind of guys in free agency. Samson Ebukam, who was a Ram and then was a 49er more recently, is an interesting player on the edge for them. They added a new kicker, Matt Gay, who was the Rams kicker. Quarterback Gardner Minshew, right? As the backup quarterback, may initially be the starter. Who knows? We'll see. And then receiver Isaiah McKenzie from the Bills.
Yeah.
But obviously some of the more prominent or exciting additions happened in the draft.
Yeah, so they picked up our guy Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Talked about him back when we were doing those views. Let's see, cornerback Juju Brents, and then a receiver Josh Downs. So beefing up the skill positions on the outside on both sides of the ball. Their management's going to be Chris Ballard over at the general manager spot. Shane Steichen he was from Philly, right? That was him? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
The head coach, Shane Steichen. They got their offensive coordinator, Jim Bob Cooter, and their D coordinator is going to be Gus Bradley.
Yeah. I think I really like this staff that Shane Steichen has put together. I think there's a lot of promise for this team to be pretty good. I obviously really like Shane Steichen and what he was able to do in Philly. So we'll see. I think, again, I like Shane Steichen as much as I like DeMeco Ryans in terms of young rising head coaches who could really have a huge impact on their team in not just 2023, but really beyond that. But if we look at like who's going to be playing for them next year, at the left tackle spot, they have Bernard Ramain. Now, they did also draft a freaky athletic tackle from BYU who figures to be the left tackle of the future, and that's Blake Freeland. I believe he was drafted in either the third or fourth round. Can't remember date. It was end of day 3 or beginning of day 4 pick for them. But really, really athletic kid. Had crazy combine numbers. And then at the left guard, Quentin Nelson, who's been there for a while, has been a really good player for them. Same thing at center with Ryan Kelly. Those two are two of the best combos of interior offensive linemen in the NFL. At the right guard, Will Fries, and then at the right tackle, Braden Smith. Obviously at quarterback now, we've got Anthony Richardson there and then Gardner Minshew. We'll see who starts the season, but obviously it's Anthony Richardson's job, likely moving forward in the future. And then at running back, you've got Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, formerly of the Buffalo Bills. At the skill positions, Michael Pittman Jr. figures to be the X receiver again. A really good player for them for a few years now, despite sort of different quarterback play. Kind of again that revolving door since
Philip.
Since
Luck left.
Andrew Luck left. I mean, they've Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Sam, the kid from Texas, Sam Ellinger, Nick Foles. I mean, they've had a number of different guys start at quarterback for them since Andrew Luck retired. So it's been tough on them, but through all that, Michael Pittman Jr. has been a really good player. At tight end, they've got Jelani Woods and Mo Alley Cox, both pretty good receiving threats. Then at the R receiver, they'll probably start with Isaiah McKenzie coming over from Buffalo, but don't be surprised if Josh Downs plays a lot as the season goes. He's a really good receiver from North Carolina. And then at the other Z receiver, going into year 2, Alec Pierce, coming out of Cincinnati, had a decent rookie year, should be poised to be much better in year 2. On defense, at the edge spot, Kwity Paye has been a productive player for them out of Michigan. They also have Tyquan Lewis there with him. In the interior, they've got Grover Stewart, Taven Bryan, obviously DeForest Buckner, one of their best defensive players in the last couple years. And then Adetomiwa Adebawor is backing him up as well, giving them some depth. And then at the edge, they brought in Samson Ebukam. At linebacker, you've got Zaire Franklin at the will spot with EJ Speed giving a little depth. And then obviously at Mike, Darius Leonard, another guy who's been there for some time, just a playmaker when he's healthy. That's been his big thing, is just staying healthy. If he stays healthy, he's one of the better Mike linebackers in the league. At that nickel corner spot, a guy who's been really good for them is Kenny Moore. Had some really good productive seasons. Then at the corner spots, they bring in Juju Brents in the draft. They have Isaiah Rodgers Sr. and then Darius Rush as well, giving them some depth. And then at safety, you've got Rodney Thomas II and Julian Blackmon. So they're going to be young, a little inexperienced in the back end, but I really like their front seven.
Yeah, quick question. Did you see the video of Anthony Richardson doing
camp stuff, like where he does the
Yeah, he was doing a boot and then threw the ball into a little
Yeah,
hole
he did the
that.
over the bag drill where they're slapping at him and then he escapes the pocket and throws the ball through the net.
Yeah. Did you see
I
that?
saw it.
I don't know about you, but I was seeing that he was just getting backlash, like, oh, my guy's throwing it to nobody. It's a not moving, whatever.
All right. So one, I don't understand why people always do this. They always freak out about practice video, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
And people always have takes on it. It's like at the end of the day, dude, one, throwing that ball in that little net is harder than people think it is.
Yeah.
There's most people are not going to be able to get out there and just throw the ball and put it right in that spot.
Yeah.
So that's one. Two, at the same time, it is a net and there's no pressure on him and it's practice.
Yeah.
He should be hitting the ball in that net. He's an NFL quarterback. He's a top 5 pick. That's what should be happening. Either end of the spectrum of oh, it's not moving, it's so easy, or oh my gosh, look at him, he's going to be a problem, which I actually saw the opposite end, which Anthony Richardson's going to be a problem, fire emojis.
Yeah.
I like Anthony Richardson. I really like him in the Shane Steichen offense, but that one clip of practice is not why I like him, nor is it going to get me excited. So my thing to everyone is just can we all just calm down and stop overreacting to practice videos? Just weird.
Yeah. One thing I will say is it's like you see the people doing the Dr. Pepper challenge or something where they're throwing the ball in the thing, right? And they still miss. You know what I mean? It's not easy, whatever way you want to look at it. So I mean that's the only comparable thing I could think of. Or even at the arcade, they got the little there's a deep ball dude, a mid-range short pass or whatever, or touchdown you want to call it. It's the same thing. It's still hard no matter what scale you're doing it on.
Yep.
But yeah, the schedule that the Colts got rolling, as we saw with the Jags, they play them week 1, except they're at home and the Jags are on the road. Got a couple away games here, week 2 and 3. Another divisional game, they're playing the Texans on the road, followed by the Ravens on the road. And then they got a couple home games. They play the Rams at home, week 4. Week 5, they play the Titans at home. So they get all their divisional games within the first 5 weeks. That's pretty wild. Let's see, week 6 on the road, playing the Jags, so they play them pretty quick for both those games. Week 7 and 8, they're at home. They play the Browns, and then they play the Saints. If I had to guess, we're looking at that easy stretch coming up right here. So week 9, they got on the road versus the Panthers. And then they go to Germany, week 10 against the Patriots.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. New land out there. Let's see. Week 11, they get their bye week. So like I said, they go overseas and they get that bye. But that was unfortunate for who we were looking at last time. Week 12, they're playing the Bucks at home. Then a couple road games here, 13 and 14. They play in Tennessee week 13. Week 14, they travel out to Cincy. And they got a home game versus the Steelers week 15. Week 16, they go on the road to Atlanta playing the Falcons, and then they close out with 2 home games versus Vegas and then the Texans. Dang, Texans are week 2 and then week 18. We talked about that with the Texans schedule, which is still wild to me.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for the Colts, and which will play in, I think, to my overall prediction for this team, I think their hardest thing for them is just their first 6 weeks are 6 hard games. The fact that they open the season versus the Jaguars, I think that puts them, whether it's Gardner Minshew or Anthony Richardson, that probably puts them at a loss. Now they got to go on the road to the Texans, then on the road to the Ravens. Yeah. They get the Rams at home, the Titans at home, then they go back to Jacksonville. And I just think that stretch of games is, the Jaguars twice, the at the Ravens. Those are 3 that I just feel like are going to be tough. Again, even if they start right away with Anthony Richardson, that's going to be young rookie growing pains. He's going to make mistakes despite the talent. So I just think those are 3 rough games right there. And then the other 3 at the Texans versus the Rams versus the Titans are no gimmies. Like those are tough games too. It's a tough divisional game on the road, a tough divisional game against a team that was better than them last year with the Titans. And then the Rams are a team that I think a lot of people, you're kind of wondering what that team could be. That could be an easier game. It could be a harder game. It's earlier in the season, so you kind of never know.
True.
So I really think that this stretch, they could be 1-5 out of the gate. I think that's real for them. Which anytime you start that way, it always just makes the rest of your season an uphill climb, right?
True. Yeah.
And it doesn't get, a whole heck of a lot easier from there. I mean, then they get the Browns. Now, I will say week 8 through 13 is probably their best stretch of games in terms of their chances to pick up wins.
Yeah.
They get the Saints at home. They go to the Panthers. Then they go to the Patriots in Germany, but they do get the bye. Coming out of the bye week, they get the Buccaneers at home and then have to play on the road at the Titans. I think despite the Germany game, probably is the most favorable stretch.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could pick up 2 wins during that stretch of games right there. And this might be about the time that if you didn't start the season with him, Anthony Richardson's probably starting.
Yeah,
right?
True.
So could be a couple confidence booster games in there for him. You never know how that might impact your team. But overall, for a team that finished 3rd in their division last year, is coming off being a top 5 pick, this is a pretty hard schedule.
True. Yeah, they got the rookie quarterback. Who knows when they start him? But, I mean, it's going to be tough no matter what. It looks like I had them being a little bit better than you thought. You had them going similar what they did last year at 4-13. I had them at 6-11. See, the way I saw it, it was just like most games, like you said, they're not probably winning, but the Texans, maybe they split those. The Raiders, maybe they could pull that off. That's tough. But then we talked about the NFC South, maybe the only one they lose to the Saints. And then, the Steelers is not going to be easy. Kenny Pickett's, he's trending upwards out there, but it's possible. You said Rams are early, who knows what's going on with them there, but it's not going to be easy either. So, I mean, I think they could finish similar to what the Texans might do, but at the end of the day, it's just there's a lot of, like you said, growing pains. They got little kinks here and there that they got to roll with. But,
yeah, I think looking at the schedule, I think they probably start 1-5. They maybe pick up 2 wins in that stretch between weeks 8 and 13. That gets them to about 3 wins, and then I think they can probably win one of those last 3 games that they've got.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think they get the 4th win. Potentially, maybe they get to 5-12. I think 6-11 with this team would be pretty.
Looking at the top end up there.
Yeah, I think that's the top end. And I mean, I could be wrong. I really like Shane Steichen. I told you I like what they've done with the staff. I really like Anthony Richardson. They're better up front right now. There's still some work to do. There's still some work to do at the skill positions. Defensively, they're really young in the back end. So I see a lot of mistakes this year, a lot of growing pains, I think.
Uh-huh.
But hopefully for their part, they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, so you briefly touched on Shane Steichen. My question for you was, do you think he could replicate what he did with Philly with Anthony Richardson here in Indy?
Oh, yeah. I think Shane Steichen was the perfect coach for Anthony Richardson to get drafted to. I don't think Anthony Richardson is just Jalen Hurts 2.0. I think I see a lot of Jalen Hurts in him. I see a lot of Cam Newton, right? I talked a lot about that.
Yeah, true.
So there's a lot of things to like about Anthony Richardson. But the thing that's fun about the Shane Steichen offense, and I want to credit this, right? The guy named Anthony DeMeco on Twitter, this was his quote when talking about the Shane Steichen offense. It's mesh it, screen it, slant it, bomb it. And that's kind of what he does. If you look at their offense, a great chunk of their throws, of Jalen Hurts' throws last year, were less than 10 yards. But then the next big chunk were all like 30-plus yard throws. Yeah. So they love to hit you with the mesh, RPO and or like zone read as part of their run game. So he loves that mobile quarterback who likes to do that. Jalen Hurts is big, can take that pounding. similarly to Anthony Richardson, which is where they're really similar. Then he loves to throw perimeter screen to all his players, running backs, tight ends, receivers. Then they love to kind of give you the quick slant right now against zone, get between the hook defender and flat defender and hit that window. And then they love, obviously, to hit you with the vertical ball. All things that I think Anthony Richardson is actually good at and has the skill set for. So the thing about that, too, is the Eagles were second in explosive plays last year, and they were almost exactly half run and pass. So it's not like just they're creating big, long throws, but like they're good in the run game. It's all together. Whereas the Colts ranked in the bottom 8 of that stats, explosive plays last year. And so I think Anthony Richardson fits really well in what Shane Steichen's going to want to do, and I'll show you the tape here in a second. I don't know if it's going to show up enough in 2023. As I said, I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains. I think Anthony Richardson's going to make a lot of mistakes early on. However, I think there's a really bright future. I think he could have a similar developmental plan to like what Josh Allen looked like, right? Josh Allen really struggled with some accuracy stuff in year 1, but paired with Brian Daboll and the things that they were able to do, he saw him get better in year 2, and then year 3, he was kind of an MVP level player and has been kind of at that since. I think there's some very similar, you could see some similar development for Anthony Richardson. So that's why, even though I'm saying I think they'll be about 4-13 this year, don't take that as me thinking that Anthony Richardson's not going to be a good player, because I do, or that Shane Steichen's not a good, coach, because I actually think the opposite.
Yeah.
So here's a play in their season against the Lions. I just picked this game out just to kind of show this philosophy. You saw it all in this game. This was game 1 last year. So there's the kind of the mesh it, right? Little zone read. Jalen Hurts is going to draw the defender in, or it's not even zone read, but it was rather a quarterback split zone coming back the other way. But you see the mesh, where I talk about meshing it. You saw a lot of that action on RPOs too. Now here's the screen it. You're going to throw the tunnel screen coming back to A.J. Brown, coming back to the middle of the field. Again, you see kind of how they draw the defense in just to get the ball out. Kind of a dangerous throw, but it ends up being a really positive play for them. Now we'll see the slant it. Again, this is going to be to A.J. Brown. And the common theme here actually was they loved to throw the ball to A.J. Brown. You see that? They split the zone right there, right? Find the hole in the zone. A.J. Brown had a big game in this game for a reason, but you can kind of see from this angle what Jalen Hurts sees, where that void between the flat defender and the hook defender, right? Finds all that grass, gets the ball to his guy. And now here you go. You're going to get the bomb it, right? Look at the matchup one-on-one. He knows he's got one-on-one up top there. Vertical ball.
Little PI.
Bazinga. Oh, yeah. And A.J. Brown's a tough dude to bring down.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Now, I will say that the big difference right now is, as good as Michael Pittman Jr. is, the Colts don't have an A.J. Brown yet. And that's kind of be the thing, again, this year as well, that I think keeps them from being maybe as good as that Philly offense. They clearly don't have the playmakers. But these are all things we've seen. These are all clips I went through with the Anthony Richardson film pre-draft process of things he can do. There's the mesh it, right? He threw the slant on the first play. Now he comes off the RPO on play 2 and can really rip the ball in there, right? You can see him kind of throwing those intermediate balls right in the middle of the field. And then, obviously there's going to be the play where he can bomb it. And so I think there's a lot of similarities. This is the one off the play action where he just absolutely decimates the LSU defense, throwing that vertical ball. So there's a lot of natural fit there. It just, again, I think it's going to take time. And that's all. But I do believe that Shane Steichen's going to adapt, obviously with the input of Jim Bob Cooter, is going to be able to adapt that offense in Indianapolis.
Yeah, so the last 4 team on this division that we're taking a look at is going to be the Tennessee Titans. Last year they went 7-10. I'm out here making up 2 games for fun. Let's see. They finished second in division, and they just missed the playoffs at 7-10.
Yeah, they lost some guys. They lost Edge Bud Dupree. They lost Robert Woods. They Taylor Lewan had been a staple there for so long. They released him. They lost linebackers Zach Cunningham and David Long Jr. They lost the guard and Nate Davis. They lost their tight end, Austin Hooper. So a lot of losses last year, a lot of stuff that, just last season, I don't think they had the year that they wanted to have. Yeah. And so, there were some guys who were cap casualties like Taylor Lewan and Robert Woods. But then there were also some guys that left in free agency that just got more money like David Long Jr. So they've got a lot of replacing to do with some of those veteran players. But they did add some good players in free agency. Andre Dillard coming in at tackle, adding Arden Key at the edge position, adding Aziz Alshire at linebacker, and then obviously quarterback Sean Murphy Bunting. All big additions to this, mostly on defense. So, and we know Mike Vrabel loves defense, so I think they'll be potentially better defensively this year than they even were last year.
Yeah, and then out the draft, they picked up a tackle, Peter Skoronski, who we talked about. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing him getting some time playing there because we talked about his versatility across the line, so that'll be huge. And then they, as everyone knows, they picked up Will Levis as well. We'll see when he gets a chance to play, if it's this year or not. Looking forward to that too. And then the management coaching staff they got rolling. They got general manager. Is that an O or A?
That's Rand Carthon. He's in year one.
So Rand Carthon. I was looking at it. I was like, that definitely looks like an A, but Rand is that's a name I've never heard of.
Less common name than Ron, right?
Yeah. Head coach Mike Vrabel, as we all know. OC or offensive coordinator is going to be Tim Kelly, and then their defensive coordinator is going to be Shane Bowen.
Yeah. There's definitely, they have some fun stuff going on in terms of what they did in the draft. I also liked, they added running back Tyjae Spears, another Senior Bowl hype guy at running back coming out of Tulane. And then the tight end Josh Wiley out of Cincinnati is also a player to keep your eye on. Okay. But looking at their offense, I think at left tackle, they're going to end up starting Andre Dillard there. They also have Jalen Duncan for a little bit of depth. It appears that Peter Skoronski is probably going to play guard for them. Okay. Just based on what they've got on the roster right now, kind of makes the most sense. That's where he slides in the best for them. At center, they've got Aaron Brewer. They added Daniel Brunskill to come play a guard position for them. And then they also have Nicholas Petit-Frere at the other tackle spot, which potentially Skoronski could play, just again, depending on how things shake out. But based on their depth that they have, they've got more tackles than they do guards. And so it kind of feels like he's going to slide in more naturally at guard for them. I know a lot of teams, I thought he was a legit tackle. Evaluating him, I think he has the feet to play it, but I do know a lot of teams felt like he could be a dominant guard. And you talked about the versatility, right? I think he's versatile enough that he could be a good player anywhere you put him. So if it's guard, I think, so be it for him. Obviously at quarterback, you've got Ryan Tannehill coming back, should be healthy. Will Levis coming in as a rookie. And then Malik Willis is still there. That's another guy like Daniel, Davis Mills was talking about. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Malik Willis. If he ends up being the third string guy, which is kind of what's expected right now, what will happen with him if he'll end up being their practice squad, kind of third activated quarterback on game day. At running back, obviously, you've got Derrick Henry. They have Hassan Haskins out of Michigan, who was a rookie last year. It was pretty good for them. And then obviously adding Tyjae Spears in the draft, like I talked about, gives them some versatility at running back. That's fun. At the X receiver spot, Treylon Burks comes back for year 2. He should be better.
Yeah, definitely.
At the Y spot, they've got Chigozie Okonkwo. And then also, as I talked about, Josh Wiley in the draft should give them another tight end threat. At the R position, Kyle Phillips comes back. And they also have Nick Westbrook-Ikhine at the Z spot. So there's a lot to be desired at the skill positions in Tennessee. Outside of running back, I think, there's a lot of guys who are sort of still young, developing, not big names. So there's definitely reason to be kind of concerned about this Tennessee offense. There's a lot a lot right now on Derrick Henry's shoulders and a lot
True.
on Ryan Tannehill to be, to play above his ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get everyone in line.
I definitely think it's probably better this year if Will Levis doesn't play, just for Levis.
Yeah, true.
I think there's a lot going on in terms of the turnover on their offensive line, the skill positions being so young and inexperienced. So Tannehill's probably going to take a beating this year, honestly. He did last year, and that's why he was hurt. So we'll see if we get to see Levis this year or not. Defensively, though, Harold Landry III had a really good year last year. They also have DeMeco Autry behind him. They have Tyler Tart and Jeffrey Simmons inside. Jeffrey Simmons got paid. Big fella.
Dude's a monster, bro.
Rocking that 98. Looks good on the screen, too, with the sleeve and the visor. My God, makes being a big fella look good. At the other edge, they bring in Arden Key. Really, really productive player. At the will linebacker spot, a guy they brought in free agency is Luke Gifford. They also have Monty Rice. Figures to be in a position battle with him. Aziz Alshir at the mic. Roger McCreary at the nickel corner spot. And then on the back end, probably their best position group on the team right now, Christian Fulton and Caleb Farley at one corner. And then Sean Murphy-Bunting comes in as a big free agent addition at the other corner. Kevin Byard at safety, who's been an all-pro, and Amani Hooker at the other safety spot. I mean, this group is really good, experienced. Like I said, I would say they're the best group on this team overall as a position group. So, yeah, we'll see what they do.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention before we take a look at the schedule was, I'm sure you've seen it where they talked about supposedly Derrick Henry was going to get traded.
There was some talk about it.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure no one forgot about it real quick. It's still out there in the world. Who knows if it's true or not? I doubt it, but you never know.
You're trying to speak it into existence right now?
No, I don't want to, but I mean, you never know. It was a wild statement when it came out because that was the first day Twitter took off the check mark. So everyone was like, is this real, for one? And then the other side was like, bro, this is crazy. He might get traded. So I just wanted to make sure no one forgot about it.
I can't imagine
still a statement.
This team without Derrick Henry, what they would look like. I mean, it just feels like he's so tied to Mike Vrabel too, and the attitude of this team. I also don't know who's going to invest the capital to trade for him right now. I mean, I think it's more likely that the Vikings move on from Dalvin Cook than the Titans moving on from Derrick Henry. Put it that way.
Yeah, that's another one we'll have a look at.
We'll get there when we talk Vikings.
Yeah. Maybe by then it's already settled, honestly.
Yeah.
But so the schedule the Titans are looking at this year, they got week 1 on the road versus the Saints. That could be just fun in general, two team looking to make a name and the other team just getting a new quarterback as in Derek Carr. So off the bat, it could be fun. Then they're at home against the Chargers. That sounds tough. Let's see, they got the Browns on the road, or they're on the road at the Browns, week 3. They got the Bengals, week 4, tough game. Let's see, week 5, they go to Indianapolis. They finally get their first division game. And then they travel to London, week 6 against the Ravens. That sounds tough, not just against the Ravens, but having to travel. And then look at that. As I talked about earlier, they come back and get a bye. Following the bye, they got the Falcons at home. And then they got multiple games here on the road. They got week 9 in Pittsburgh on a Thursday night game. Then they got the Bucks in Tampa. Following that, they get their second divisional game at Jacksonville. And then week 12 and 13, they're at home against the Panthers and Colts. If I had to guess, that's probably where we're looking at the easy stretch of the schedule for them. Let's see, week 14, they get a Monday night game versus the Dolphins in Miami. That sounds fun. Let's see, 15 and 16, they're at home. They play the Texans week 15, and then they play week 16 against the Seahawks. That's a new team from a new division in this whole one that we've seen. Week 17, they're playing the Texans again, as we've seen earlier in Houston this time. And they close out against the Jags at home.
Yeah. as you said, there are definitely like this is one of the ones where you can see very easily like the easy, tough stretches. Obviously, weeks 1 through 6, just right out of the gate. I mean, tough, like they only have 2 real home games in the first 6 weeks. And those games are against the Chargers and Bengals, which are 2 games that they feel likely to lose, honestly. Yeah. I mean, those 2 games feel like very tough games against teams with a little bit more talent than them. They'll have to, kind of make it gritty to try and beat them, but like those are 2 tough ones. You got road games at the Saints, the Browns, obviously Colts, a divisional game, and then going to London to play the Ravens. I mean, I think that the Colts are probably the only, just because it's that early in the season, I talked about the growing pain. I think the Colts are only like the only countable win in that stretch. Yeah, I do think I trust the grit of Mike Vrabel and this team to pull one other game out in that stretch. And so I think it's realistic that they're 2-4 going into the bye week. Yeah. Just rough start. However, you come out of that rough start, and I think weeks 12 through 17, you could see the Titans coming down the stretch and, winning a lot of games, really finishing this season off. I mean, coming out of the bye, Falcons, Steelers, Bucks, Jags, that's a kind of a medium sort of stretch. Maybe they go 2-2 there to get themselves sitting around 4-6. And then you've weeks 12 through 17, you've got 4 home games out of those 6 games. The Panthers, the Colts, the Texans, and the Seahawks, and then 2 road games at the Dolphins, at the Texans. I really think that could be a 5-and-run stretch for them, right?
True.
And then finishing the season versus the Jaguars. So I think that the Titans have kind of an uneven schedule where it's going to look bad early. They're going to have some tough losses early, I believe. But I think coming out of the bye week, they're going to be refreshed and they're going to have some very winnable games. Yeah. And they could be a team that, finishes really strong down the stretch despite a slow start. Sometimes you have that like front end of the season, back end of the season teams where it's like two different teams. And I think the Titans look poised to be that kind of team this year.
I feel that, yeah. I mean, this is the rare occasion. Looks like you had them doing better than I thought. You had them improving at 9-8 on the year, and then I had them doing the exact same at 7-10. If I had to guess, it was probably because I just assumed Will Levis was going to play, and like it was going to be tougher to like win games with the rookie quarterback. But that's how I probably see it. What was your thoughts on going 9-8?
I think I just trust Mike Vrabel. I think they're going to be really good defensively. I think they're obviously going to have questions on offense. I think they can realistically go 4-2 in the division, which means you're asking them to go 5-6 against everyone else. I think extremely doable. I think there's wins that they can pick up against that NFC South. A lot of winnable games there. I think they'll be competitive against the likes of the Steelers and the Dolphins. At least the Seahawks are a tough game, but they get them at home, so that could make a difference. Obviously,
have them travel to them.
Yeah, the Saints on the road at the Saints in week 1, new quarterback, new system there. Maybe you sneak up on the Saints early in the year, you get a win there. But I think 9-8 is a pretty realistic goal for this team. Especially with as much turnover of veterans that they had last year. For them to be better this year would be impressive. But I think I just trust Mike Vrabel so much that's why I think I trust them to go 9-8 here.
Gotcha. So my question for you for the Titans was, do you think that their offense can be good down the stretch in their games to close out close wins?
Well, this is the Titans in 2022. This is a crazy stat. I don't think I've seen anyone talk about it either. They lost 6 one-possession games where their opponent scored 21 points or fewer. That's tough from a defensive standpoint. If I'm holding an NFL team to 21 points or less, I'm really feeling like our team should be winning.
Sounds like the Broncos, if you ask me.
Well, it's like last year they lost a tough week 1 game, 21-20 to the Giants. Ooh. They lost a game on the road in which Malik Willis couldn't throw a pass against the Chiefs, 20-17 in overtime. Ooh. They lost a game at the Bengals 20-16. or versus the Bengals, I should say. They lost the game versus the Chargers 17-14. They lost the game versus the Texans 19-14.
Ooh.
And they lost the game versus the Jaguars 20-16. So those are those six.
That's a lot of close games. One possession.
6 one-possession games where the other team scored 21 points or fewer. You got to be able to win those games. And so obviously their offense just wasn't good enough in those moments. They ranked 28th in points on offense last year and 14th in points on defense. So their defense is good. I think could be potentially even better this year. Offensively, they got to figure it out. They got to find ways to win these close games and just produce points when they absolutely need it. So I went back, watched some of those close games. The game that stood out to me was really this Bengals game at home. Was a really tough one for them. So this is a drive earlier in the game where they go 3 and out, right?
Okay.
Play 1, hand off to Derrick Henry that goes nowhere. They're not getting push up front. They're not getting the push up front that they need. And it's a predictable stretch run on 1st and 10, right? Okay. Yeah. Play 2, 2nd and long, right? They're going to say, all right, we're going to give you this bunch look up top, and we're going to do it to try and spread you out and run the football in between the tackles.
I think he missed a hole on there.
He goes and gets 2 yards, right? Yeah. Well, you're thinking cut back on this? Yeah, well, he tries to get there. Yeah, he cut it. It was front side, and he cut it back. He should have kept it front side. Now we get 3rd and long. What are they going to do on 3rd and long? They're going to try and throw the ball, but he gets hit as he throws. Receiver can't make a play for him, right?
Yeah.
And so that's
hold
tough.
On off the back leg, all tough.
Yeah, like that O-line, that's not on Tannehill. Guy comes free. He tries to get the ball out.
I didn't know that.
Makes it it's at least in position where his receiver could make a play for him, and now they're punting. Okay, now this is later in the game, right? It is 20-13. Yeah, 20-13. They've got a little bit of a drive going, and so we'll just go through these plays, right? Their offense is built on play action. They get the ball to Derrick Henry. He's going to go make a play in the open field, go pick up 9 yards. This is when their offense is at its best, doing things like play action, pass, screen. Get the ball into Treylon Burks' hand early and let him go do something with it. Get the ball to Derrick Henry in space, let him do something with it. That's what their offense is built on. The problem is if teams take that away, they really don't have enough skill out there to counter that. They don't. If you're going to watch this, they never take a shot vertical. Here's a run play that goes nowhere on 2nd and short. Now they've got 3rd and short, right? And here you can see.
You do it again? Is that what they did?
Yeah. They tried to run power and front side. It just doesn't get there. It doesn't hit right. So now they got 3rd and short. Now they're going to spread them out and go empty. Right? They try and get the pick play. They get it, right? They get a receiver open. Burks goes and gets them like 17 yards on that. It's huge. Big time play. Big time play, right? On 3rd and short. In a game where, again, they're down 20-13 with like 6 minutes to go. This is like, you're kind of in that not quite do or die area, but you got to go get points on the board.
Yeah.
Yeah. So big time play. They come back. Now it's 1st and 10 from the 25 going in. What are they going to do?
Oh, no.
Run the ball, try and run the stretch. And they get stuffed. The Bengals knew, like, we're loading up on 1st down. Look, they've already got 6 in the box. 7th guy coming off the edge. That's Mike Hinton making a play as he normally does from that slot corner position. Okay, now we got 2nd and long. We're doing some stuff, putting Derrick Henry in the slot. Little fake jet sweep to throw.
Oh, I don't think he knew that screen was behind him.
it just the whole thing, right? It looks disjointed, doesn't it? It doesn't look right. So again, this is that offense is like trying to be creative, but they don't have it, and it just the whole thing. Now it's 3rd and really long, right? Again, this is game on the line stuff. So now we're asking Ryan Tannehill to go make a play. Okay, he gets a kind of short throw, but this is like we're setting up the field goal.
Yeah.
Right. We get 8 yards out of it.
But I meant in terms of trying to score, you're just settling as opposed to
you're settling for that. You're saying, hey, we're going to get the ball in at the 20, so we have a makeable field goal.
Yeah.
We're going to let our kicker go kick a field goal. But remember,
if I'm watching this, I can assume what the outcome is.
Well, he makes it, right? Oh. But remember, they were down 7.
True.
So now, and what are they? They were down 20-13. They kicked that field goal, and what happens? Game over. I mean, really, the Bengals were able to kind of yeah, the Bengals were able to run out the clock, and then the Titans never got the ball back, right? So they lose that game 20-16. They had a shot in the red zone, near the red zone to go get a touchdown on the board and tie the game, and their offense just can't functionally do it. And that's what it came down to. They settled for too many field goals. They had too many drives early in a game, like the one I showed you, the first set of plays, and ultimately they sputtered in moments where their defense really needed to pick them up. And so I think you can kind of see ultimately the Titans, they're just going to have to be more productive on offense for them to win some of these games. And I think if Tannehill's healthy for the whole year, that helps them. Or if Levis can come in and give them a spark, that helps them, obviously, right? But I think that's what's keeping them from being a really, really good team and being able to win the division versus like a mediocre, like Mike Vrabel really does some stuff defensively, makes some magic happen, and gets this team in right around 500. So
see what they do. I mean, either way, they're probably finishing second in the division, no matter what plays out. So
it feels likely.
Yeah. But in terms of the banger of the week, comes back to me this week. I wanted to go watch some movies this weekend. Didn't play out. But I'll try to get that for the next one. I won't spoil which ones I want to go watch. But what I'm rolling with this week is the classic. I'm going back to music. I truly don't know the name of the song. I could tell you what it is. I don't know if it's technically the right name. So it's a song by Quavo and Takeoff. I'm rolling with 2.30 as the name. Or maybe it's $2.30. I don't really know. But that's how it's lined up. It's a number 2, got a period, and then 30. So I don't know. But it's a fun song to listen to. I check it out. That's my banger for the week.
All right. I'll have to check it out. Well, we've got the AFC South done. Come back next week to listen to us talk about the NFC South. I talked about that being quite possibly the worst division in football. So it's a great set, great promo for next week. If you want to listen to the worst, possibly the worst division in football, come back and we'll explain why. Or if one of your teams is in that division, maybe we'll explain to you why there's reason for hope. Maybe they won't be as good this year, but things are looking up, XYZ. Yeah. Or maybe you'll just hate what we have to say and you can come hate. Either way, we welcome
I was once told you haven't made it until you got haters. So if we would love to have those next week.
We are looking. Applications for haters are underway. Please apply and submit your application to Jodye, and we'll review. But in the meantime, have fun listening to this podcast. We love doing it. We love the fans. Jodye, what do they got to subscribe to? Let the people know.
Yeah. So TikTok, we got a TikTok rolling. It's the 2nd and 2 podcast. It's gonna be the word and all that's gonna be jumbled into one word. Let's see. We got Twitter. What's the Twitter at? What you got?
2nd and 2 podcast, just as it appears on the YouTube. 2nd & 2 podcast.
Perfect. Yeah. So go like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave a review. Any feedback is good feedback. And till then, we got our guy Ray taking us out.
Take us out, Ray.